Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are going to cover bank reconciliations. Today's video is going to be slightly longer because in today's video, we are going to cover entire end-to-end process of bank reconciliation, and also I'm going to share a practical example. So what are the topics we are going to cover in today's video? First of all, we will start with what is bank reconciliation. Then we will look what are the reasons which cause the difference between bank statement and our journal ledger. Followed by, we will look the various steps we perform in order to reconcile our bank. And lastly, we are going to look at a practical example where we are going to see various receipts and payment, and we will book the journal entry for all of them. Followed by, we will prepare the journal ledger and compare it with our bank statement. And I will show you step-by-step guide how we actually perform the bank reconciliation in corporate world. So in today's video, we are not only going to look at the theory part, but also see with the practical example how we actually apply these steps in the real world scenario. So without any further ado, let's get started. So first thing first, what is bank reconciliation? Bank reconciliation is a process by which company compares its internal record, that is journal ledger, with their external record, which is bank statement. Or in other words, we can say bank reconciliation is the process of comparing the balances in a company's account records, which is journal ledger, to the corresponding information on a bank statement. The objective of bank reconciliation is to identify any discrepancies between two sets of record and reconcile them to ensure accurate financial reporting. No matter how good your process is, there are going to be difference between your bank statement and journal ledger for sure. So what could be the various reasons which cause these differences? Let us look at them one by one. So the first reason could be one transaction is appearing in one set of record but not in the other one. For example, bank charges. Let's suppose bank has charged any fees for their services, so they will record in their bank statement immediately, but there are chances that you might have not booked any journal entry for those expenses, which can cause the difference between your journal ledger and the bank statement balance. Apart from that, what could be the other reasons? For example, you have issued one check and you have recorded that check in your journal ledger, but the check is not presented for payment in the bank, due to which you have reduced your bank balance, but in bank statement your balance is still appearing higher. So that could be the another reason of difference between your bank statement and your journal ledger. And like this, you can imagine so many scenarios, like you have posted any incorrect journal entry, or you have posted with incorrect sign, you have posted any journal with incorrect amount. So these are various scenarios in which your bank statement balance won't match with your journal ledger. So these are few of the reasons which can cause difference between your bank statement and your journal ledger, which is your internal record. So remember, in school days, we have learned we compare the bank statement with our cash book. So in corporate world, we don't say it cash book, we say it internal records or journal ledger of company. So you are comparing your journal ledger with your bank statement in order to reconcile them, which is your bank reconciliation process. Okay, great. Now let's move on and look at the steps involved in bank reconciliation process. So the very first step of bank reconciliation is gathering document. You need to collect various relevant documents such as bank statement, cash receipts, cash payment voucher, etc. So this will be your first step of bank reconciliation process. Before starting your reconciliation, you need to gather all the relevant documentation. Once you are done with step 1, you can move to step 2, which is compare the bank statement. In this step, what you are going to do, you are going to compare the bank statement received from bank with company's internal record, such as the cash book or journal ledger, and verify the opening balance and closing balance. And in order to reconcile your bank, you need to match all the transactions which have taken place during the month. Once you are done with step 2, you are going to move on to step 3, which is identify the differences. When you are going to compare your bank statement with your internal records, you will identify various discrepancies between your bank statement and company's internal record. Few of the examples are outstanding check, deposit in transit, bank fees, interest earned, or any error or omission which you would have done in your internal record or in the bank statement. Next step in our reconciliation process is going to be reconcile the deposit. So you need to tick off all the deposits that appear on both journal ledger and bank statement. You need to identify if there is any deposit in transit that is those deposits which you have recorded in your books of account but not yet credited in your bank statement. And when you identify any such deposit, you need to adjust your journal ledger by passing journal entries, which we are going to look in the later stage of video when we will see the practical example. Once you are done reconciling deposits, our next step would be to reconcile the check. So what you are going to do is you need to identify any outstanding check, that is those checks which is recorded in the company's book but not yet cleared at bank. The reason could be the check is not yet presented for payment, or the check is presented but there is some issue due to which the payment is not cleared. So whatever your finding would be in this step, you need to adjust your journal ledger based on your findings. Next step in our bank reconciliation process would be to account any kind of fees or interest which is charged by or credited by the bank. You need to check if bank has charged any fees which you have not recorded in your books of account till now, or you have received any interest income but that is not recorded in your books yet. So if you find any such transaction, you need to record them in your books of account. Let's suppose you are done with all the previous steps, still there is any difference appearing in your bank reconciliation, then you need to again compare your bank statement with your cash book or journal ledger and identify what are the reasons because of which your reconciliation is still showing differences. You need to thoroughly investigate and identify, is there any error or omission in the books of account or even in the bank statement. And whatever your findings would be, you need to book the journal entries correct and adjust it so that your reconciliation will match. And the last step of our reconciliation would be to prepare reconciliation report and all the necessary documents. So you need to include all the details of discrepancies found, explanations, adjustment made, and the final reconciled balance. Retain all the supporting documents which you have obtained during this process, and you need to include your bank statement in the reconciled records and the reconciliation report as part of company's financial record. In top MNC companies, company use software like Blackline, which helps them in performing reconciliation effectively and efficiently. Okay, great. So I hope it is clear to you what is bank reconciliation, what are the reasons, and how we are going to perform the bank reconciliation. Now it is time that we are going to look at the practical example and understand the reconciliation process in actual corporate world, how we actually do it. Okay, so now we are on my computer screen and we will start our reconciliation process. So these are the 100 transactions which took place during the month of January. One by one, we are going to pass journal entry for each of them. Then we have the second workbook, which is our journal entry or journal ledger workbook. Here we have two tabs. Tab number 1 is journal entries. Here we are going to book all the 100 journal entries which we have seen in this transaction file. And then we have this second tab, which is journal ledger bank tab. This is the automated tab I have created. It is kind of your journal ledger. Whatever entries we are going to post here, it will automatically create journal ledger for those entries. So let's start with our first journal entry. So our first transaction is received cash from customer A, $350. So when we are going to receive any cash from customer, what will be our journal entry? Bank account debit to what will be my credit? Customer A account. And my amount was $350. I have linked it with this cell. So whenever I'm going to put any debit value, automatically it will pick my credit value as well. Okay. And you can write the narration being cash received from customer A. Okay. Now let's move on to our second journal entry. What is the transaction happened here? Paid to vendor J for insurance with check number 1010. Amount is 425. So when you are going to make any payments, what it will do? It will decrease your bank account, and to whom we are paying? To vendor J. So our vendor J account will be debited and our bank account will be credited. And the amount here is $425. Okay. Again, you can write narration being amount paid to vendor J. Okay. So like this, we are going to pass all the journal entries one by one. Date here was again 1st of January 2024. So I'll correct the date. Okay, now let's move on to our journal number 3, which is paid for domain renewal. Now, if you're not sure what kind of expense this is, so this expense is related to website. So the date is again 1st of January. So what I'll do is I'll correct the date here first, 1st of January. Then, okay, because we have to switch again, let me do one thing. I'll go to home, then click view. And then here I can see arrange all. So I can see both the Excel file together. So let's work this way. This will be a faster way of doing it. So by doing this, we can see both the Excel file together. So this will increase our efficiency and we'll be able to book all the journal entries faster. But I cannot see the amount here. So what I'll do is I'll just zoom out a little bit. I think that is fine. Yeah, now we can see the journal entry workbook as well as all the transactions. Okay, so now let's move on and book our third journal. So the domain expense we are going to pay to. So we are going to debit domain renewal expense. And because we are paying it, so our bank balance will reduce. So we'll write bank account. And what is the amount here? $25. So I'll just type 25. Okay, great. Now our fourth transaction here is paid to vendor K. This is related to marketing consulting. So what will be our journal entry here? So vendor K account will be debited. I'm not going to write account again and again. And our bank will reduce. So bank account will be credited. What is the amount here? $750. So I'll just type 750. Okay. Now move on to our next transaction, which is earned daily interest. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention, we are not going to write the narration for all the remaining journal entries because we have so many transactions to cover, but you can write the narration if you want to practice that way. Okay, now let's move on to our next transaction, which is earn daily interest of $10. So what is our date here? I'll just link from here because I don't want to type it again and again. So this is my date here. Okay, so when you are going to earn any interest, what it will do? It will increase your bank balance and you will have an income of interest income. So what will be your journal entry in this case? Bank account will be your debited, and what will be the credited? Your interest income. What is the amount here? 10.28. Like that, we are going to move ahead with our next transaction, which took place on 2nd of January. Received cash from customer A. So again, we have received cash from customer A. So it will increase our bank balance and customer A account will be credited. Our amount would be $150. Like that, we are going to move ahead. Okay, I forgot to mention the date here, which is very important. So make sure when you are going to practice, you are also writing date in both the columns, else this journal ledger won't update correctly. Okay, sorry, I forgot to mention, you can see there is no transaction as of yet, but here we have posted so many journal entries. So whatever you are posting here, it will auto create a journal ledger. All you have to do is just come here, click anywhere in this ledger and just right click and click on this refresh. When you will click on that refresh, you can see it has picked all the balances from this journal entry, which we have posted here. So you can see the first transaction we posted, bank account debit to customer A account. So we have got balance from customer A, 350 as a credit balance. So if you will come and you will see, you can see on the 1st of January, we have credited $350 in the customer A account. And in the second transaction, we have paid to vendor J $425. So you can see in vendor J account, we are getting 425. Same, you can see $25 we have paid to domain renewal charges, which is also getting from this. And same goes for all the remaining transactions. You can see all of those are getting updated here. Okay, now let's move on and book our next journal entry. So we have booked till this transaction where we have booked this $150 cash received from customer A. Now we are going to book the next transaction, which is going to be paid to vendor T for office furniture. Okay, so what will be our journal entry? We are paying to vendor T and our bank account will be credited. What is the amount here? $450. Okay, moving ahead, what is our next transaction here is we have earned daily interest. So again, our entry would be same as the above entry. So we are just copying this and pasting it here and the amount would be here $10.20. Okay, if you want to check if your journal ledger is updated or not, you can just come here and right click and refresh. You can see the journal ledger is picking your balances. All you have to do is just right click and click on refresh. Okay, now let's move on and book our other journal entries as well. So next one on our list is received cash from customer E. Now, when you are going to receive any cash, what will be your journal entry? Bank account will increase the balance and customer E account and the receivable of customer E will get reduced. So what is the amount here in this case? $231.67. Moving ahead, now let's book our next journal entry, which is booked on 3rd of January. So again, what is the transaction here? Paid to vendor B for office supplies. Let me do one thing. I can write here the serial number so I can able to easily identify on which transaction we are currently. Okay, so we are on transaction number 10, which is paid to vendor B for office supplies. So when we are going to make any payment, so vendor B account will be debited and our bank account will be credited. What will be my amount here? Amount is $275. So I'll just write 275 and our transaction is done here. Moving ahead, what is my next transaction in our list? We have again earned the interest. So the entry would be same. I'm not explaining it again and again. I'll just copy paste it here to save the time. And what would be my amount here? It is 10.12. Okay, so that was my 11th journal entry. Again, moving on to our 12th one, which is paid to vendor D for professional development. Okay, so this is kind of professional development charges we have to pay to vendor B. So we have taken some services from vendor D. So we are now paying them. So what would be our journal entry? Vendor D account debit to bank account and our amount here is 350 and the date is, again I'm going to link it. Moving on, now let's book our journal entry number 13, which is received cash from customer D. Okay, so in the previous example we have paid to vendor D, but now we are receiving cash from customer D. So when you are going to receive any cash, your bank account will be debited and your customer from whom you have received the cash will be credited. Why we are crediting the customer? Because earlier we would have created a current asset, but now because we are receiving the cash, we are reducing our current assets. That's why we are crediting our customer here. Okay. Now what is our amount here is 631.79, 631.79. I'll write it here and our journal entry is completed. Again, I'll link the date because I don't want to type it again and again. Make sure you're writing date in both debit and credit, because if you won't write the date, what it will do is our journal ledger bank tab will not pick that particular transaction. For example, let me delete this date from here. And if I come here and click on this refresh button, you can see the last transaction I'm seeing is to vendor D of $350, which is this one, but this is not capturing this transaction where we have received cash from customer D. Now look, if I type the date here and then come back and click on the refresh, you can see this transaction is also now part of our bank ledger. So make sure you are writing the date in both the debit and credit column. Only then this automation will work and it will auto pick the transaction in the ledger balance. Okay. Now let's move on and book our next transaction, which is transaction number 14, purchase marketing material. So we would have purchased something. So what would be the journal entry if you are making any purchase? You will debit purchase account and you will credit your bank account because you have to make the payment. Amount is $50. So I'll just type 50 and here we go. Our transaction is done. Now move on to our 15th transaction, which is going to be paid to vendor L. Now you can see we have got some freelance graphic designing work from vendor L and now we are making payment. So what is our journal entry we are going to book? Irrespective of which vendor we are paying, if we are making any payment, we will debit that vendor. Why? Because earlier when we have received the service but we have not paid any cash, we would have created a current liability. And now when we are settling this current liability, we are debiting that current liability and reducing our bank balance because our bank or cash will reduce. So what would be my final entry here is vendor L account debit to bank account. What is the amount here? $275. So I'll just write 275. Okay, I'll link the date because it is very important. Okay, now let's move on and book our 16th journal, which is going to be received cash from customer C. So when you are going to receive any cash, your bank balance will increase and your customer will reduce. So our balance here is going to be 631.79. Okay, moving on to our 17th transaction, which is going to be paid to vendor D for rent. So whenever you are paying any rent, what will be your journal entry? Rent account debit to bank account. Okay, what is my amount in this transaction? Sorry, I made the mistake. The amount should be $325. Okay, now let's move on. We have paid amount to vendor D for rent, which is $1,200. So rent account debit to bank account with $1,200. This is my rent paid journal entry. Okay, moving on to the 18th one, received cash from customer D. So when we are going to receive any cash, our bank account will increase and our customer account will decrease. So customer D account would be credited with $379. Okay. Now again, we have received cash from customer A and customer B. So the entries would be same, just the credit would change with customer A and customer B. So I'll just copy paste this journal entry and change here vendor name with customer A and here customer B. Okay. And what is the amount we have received from customer A is 675.90 and with customer B we have 89.99. Okay, so these are dollar values. Don't think why we are booking small entries like that. Okay, so we have booked our 20 journals till now. We are going to book all the remaining 80s as well. If you also want to practice alongside me, you can scan this QR code and head to my website from where you can download this workbook and you can practice alongside with me. Or for now, if you want to just watch this video and learn, you can do it. And later on, if you want, you can get the workbook from my website by scanning the QR code or by clicking on the link in the description. Okay, now let's move on and book our journal entry number 21, paid to vendor U for website hosting. So our journal entry would be website hosting expense account debit to bank account and our amount would be here $75. Number 22 on our list is received cash from customer E. So our bank balance will increase and customer E account would be credited with 78.54. Again, the next transaction is also we have received cash from customer E. So I'm going to just copy paste this and change the amount. Moving on, 24 number is paid to vendor E for software subscription. So we would have taken some software subscription like Tele or SAP or Oracle. So we would have made the payment. So what will be my journal entry of paying to vendor V? You can write software subscription or vendor E, whatever you want to write. So what would be my journal entry in this case? Software subscription account would be debited because this is a kind of expense and our bank account will be credited because we are making the payment. So what is the amount here? 39.99. Our number 25th transaction here is paid to vendor V for accounting software. Okay. So again, it is kind of software subscription. So accounting software we have purchased and for that we have made payment. So the amount would be credited. So amount is $99.99. Okay, moving on to 26 number transaction, paid wire transfer fees. So if you are not sure what is wire transfer, I'm sure you would have done transactions with UPI or NFT. Like NFT, this is also a way of making payment and for using this service, you have to pay a fees. So you need to book that as an expense. So what is the transaction we are going to book here? Bank charges account debit to bank account, and our amount would be $25. Moving on to our transaction number 27, which is paid to vendor A for website domain renewal. Okay, so we have renewed our domain again from vendor M. So we are going to book domain renewal expense account debit to bank account, and our amount would be $15. Number 28 is earn daily interest. So we have earned any interest. What would be our journal entry in that case? Our bank account would be debited and our interest income account would be credited. Let me do some formatting here. Okay, this is better. Okay, so let's move on and book our next journal entry, which is going to be our entry number 29. So what is our transaction number 29? We have paid monthly bank fees of rupees $15. So again, it will go to bank charges account and our bank account would be credited. What is the amount? $15. Okay, our transaction number 30 is received cash from customer A, $421. So when you are going to recover any balance from your customer, your bank account would be debited and your customer account would be credited, like we have booked in our previous transaction. So what is the customer in 30 transaction? Customer A, and the amount here is 421.82. Moving ahead, now let's move on to our transaction number 31, which is going to be paid to vendor E for website design. So we have taken some website designing services, which is our expense. So we are going to book that. This is done on 9th of January to bank account because we are making the payment here. So what is the amount here of website designing? $1,200. Transaction number 32 is again related to the interest. So I'm just going to copy paste this interest entry. Just amount would change. And in this case, we have $10.25. Moving on to number 33. I'm not writing the dates again and again because it is taking time. What I'll do is after booking all the journal entries, I'll link the date because I want them to appear in this ledger. You can see all the transactions which we have booked till now, those are appearing in this journal ledger by just simply clicking on refresh by clicking right click. Okay, now let's move on and book our next journal entry, which is number 33. Received cash from customer D. So bank account would be debited, customer D account would be credited, and amount is $200. Moving on, our next is again we have received cash, but it is from customer A. So what we are going to do, instead of customer D, we'll just type customer A, and the balance we have received is 862.41. 34 is done. Number 35, paid to vendor A for inventory. Okay, so we are making payment to vendor A and our bank account would be credited. Amount is $750. Number 36, transaction is received cash from customer C, $247. So when you are going to receive, your bank account would be debited and your customer C account would be credited in this case, and the amount is 247.16. So if you think these journal entries are very easy for you and you can book them by yourself, you can check out the timestamps or chapter in this video. You can move to the next chapter, which is more complex, where I have shown how we are going to reconcile the bank reconciliation. But I'm going to book all the 100 transactions because if any one of you have any confusion, I want to clear them in this video. Number 37 would be paid to vendor N for travel expenses. Okay. So you can write vendor N or you can write travel expenses to bank account. Here I'm assuming there was no current liability created earlier. That's why I have written travel expense here. Okay, the amount is $425. Moving on to our 38 number transaction, which is paid to vendor O for software subscription. So again, software subscription account debit to bank account, and our amount would be 39.99. Transaction number 39, returned check fees. Now any kind of fees related to bank transaction would be charged as bank charges to bank account, and my amount here is $35. Number 40 is sale of unused equipment. Okay, so what is unused equipment? It is an asset. If you are selling it, your asset will decrease and you will receive cash. So your bank account would be debited and your unused equipment, no, we are going to write equipment account because there is no such asset as unused equipment. Okay, and the amount here is $125. So I'll just write 125. Number 41 on our list is paid to vendor W for delivery services. Okay, you can write delivery services or you can write vendor W to bank account. Amount is $150. Number 42 here is earn daily interest. So again, what would be my entry? Bank account debit to interest income with amount of $10.21. Okay, so you can take 10-second break. Till then, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down dates here. Okay, I'm done writing all the dates. Now I can move here and just click on the refresh. So I can see all the balances are appearing in here as well. Okay, I made a mistake. So I don't need to write 2 here. So in the ERP like SAP or Oracle, we don't need to write 2. We can just write bank account. Okay, I'll just come here and click refresh. So it can capture all the balances. Okay, I'll just save so I won't lose any data till here. Okay, this one I forgot to mention, 42, it is done till here. Now let's move on and I'm going to book transaction number 43, which is received cash from customer C. So when you are going to receive any cash from your customer, you are going to write their name. Balance is 183.72. Number 44 transaction here is paid to vendor F for equipment rental. So rent account would be debited to bank account, or alternatively, you can write the vendor F as well. Amount here is $250. Okay, now let's move on to our transaction number 45, which is sale of outdated equipment. So again, it is kind of sale of our asset. So our bank account would be debited and our equipment account would be credited. What is the amount here? We have received $150. So we are going to book it. Number 46 on our list is paid to vendor X for consulting services. So I'm going to write consulting services account debit to bank account. Alternatively, you can write here vendor X as well, but I am assuming that there was no current liability created earlier. That's why I'm writing it as a consulting service expense. Okay. What is the amount? $375. Moving on to number 47, which is going to be monthly ATM fees. So again, it is going to be kind of bank charges to bank account. Bank charges is an expense. That's why we have debited it. So monthly fees is $5. Moving on to number 48, which is received cash from customer C account. So bank account debit to customer C account. The balance we have received is 319.56. Again, next two transactions are also related to the received from customer. So I'm just going to copy paste it. Again, the next customer is customer E, and the one after that is customer B. The balances which we have received are 47.83 and 195.71. So I hope these entries are clear to you. Till now, we have completed 50 journal entries. So if you are still around, congratulations. We are halfway there, writing all the journal entries. Moving on to our journal entry number 51, which is going to be paid to vendor F for utilities. So you can write utilities expense account debit or vendor F account. So in this case, I'm writing vendor F because I'm assuming that we have already created a current liability for this vendor, and bank account would be credited because our balance would reduce, and the amount here is $215.67. Okay, number 52, which is going to be, let me just drag it as well so we won't confuse with the amounts. Paid to vendor Y for office supply. So you can write office supplies account debit to bank account because you are making any payment. Amount would be your $225. So in this case, I'm assuming that we have not already created any current liability. That's why I have debited the office supply account. Number 53 is refund from vendor for incorrect shipment. So our bank account would be debited and vendor shipment we are crediting here. Number 54 on our list is received cash from customer B. So bank account would be debited. Customer C account would be credited. Sorry, we have received from customer B. So I'll just type customer B, and the amount we have received is 392.10. Number 55, NSF fees. So this is some kind of bank charges. So we are going to write bank charges account debit to bank account. Amount would be $35. Number 56, paid to vendor G for software license renewal. So what I can do is vendor G account debit to bank account, and I am assuming that we already had created a current liability with name of vendor G. The amount is $495. Moving on to number 57, which is going to be monthly service fees for online payment gateway. We have paid $30. Monthly fees account debit to bank account, and the amount is $35. So again, I'm quickly going to link the dates. Okay, so we have booked till number 57. Now we are going to look at number 58, which is received cash from customer B. So our bank account would be debited and customer B account would be credited. And because again, the next transaction is also received cash from customer B, I'm just going to copy paste it. Moving on to number 60, which is paid to vendor P for office supplies. So I am going to write office supplies account debit to bank account, and the amount we are paying here is 198.5. Our next transaction is, again, we have made payment of bank charges. Now let's move on and book our transaction number 61, which is going to be bank account debit to interest income account with $10.30. Number 62, paid to vendor G for website maintenance. So I'm going to write vendor G to bank account. So I don't need to write I'm just going to write bank account, and the amount we have paid to vendor G is $100. Moving on to number 63, which is received cash from customer D. So again, bank account would be debited and customer D account would be credited with amount 583.24. Again, we have received any amount from customer D. So I'm going to write same, just our amount would be changed 748.52. And this entry is also done. 64 number is done. Now moving on to number 65, which is going to be earn the interest again. Okay, so I'm going to copy paste the same entry again. And the amount we have received this time is $10.13. Moving on to number 66, which is paid to vendor Z for freelance writer. Okay, so we can write it as a freelance expense, or we can book the journal as vendor Z. Amount is $200. Moving on to number 67, our transaction number 67 here is earn the interest again. Bank account would be debited and interest income would be credited with $10.22. Moving on to number 68, which is paid to vendor H for charitable donations. So you can write it as charitable donation, or you can write vendor H to bank account. Amount is $500. Number 69, which is received cash from customer E. So bank account would be debited, customer E account would be credited. What is the amount we have received? 149.08. Again, we have received any cash from another vendor. So I'm going to just write vendor A account, and the balance which we have received is 302.55. And this is transaction number 70. Moving on to number 71, which is going to be paid to vendor I for payroll taxes. So I'm going to write payroll tax expense account debit to bank account. So what is the amount of payroll tax we have paid? We have paid $2,100. Moving on to number 72, which is going to be payment for business insurance premium. Okay, so I'm going to write insurance premium account debit to bank account, and the amount we have paid is $800. So we are done till our number 72. Moving on to our number 73, which is received cash from customer D. So we are going to write bank account debit to customer D account. Okay, what is the amount we have received? $452. So I'm sure by now you are getting familiar with all these journal entries and you are able to post them by yourself without any help. But still, I'm going to cover all the 100 entries because it is very important to make you understand the concept when we are going to reconcile the balance as per journal ledger with our balance as per bank statement. That's why I am covering each and every transaction, so you can get familiar with the transaction or type of transaction we have booked here. Okay, moving on to number 75, which is paid to vendor R for legal fees. So our legal fees expense account debit to bank account. Again, what is the amount we have paid for legal fees? $750. Again, I'm going to write the dates. You can take few seconds break. Okay, so I have updated the dates. I'm going to refresh this ledger as well. Yes, we are getting all the balances still here. Moving on to number 75, our transaction number 75 is received cash from customer A. So our bank account would be debited again because we are getting cash, and customer A account would be credited. Why? Because we are reducing our current asset, which was debtor earlier, $210.9. Number 76, paid to Ankit for consulting services. Okay, so we are paying Ankit for his consulting services. You can write consulting, or I'm going to write my name. Ankit account debit to bank account. What is the amount we have paid to Ankit? $5,000. You know, very expensive consulting service. So this is a very rare consultant. That's why we are paying him that much amount. I'm a very talented consultant. That's why we have to pay large amount. Jokes apart, let's move on to number 77, which is paid to vendor A for inventory. So we are going to write vendor A account debit to bank account. Amount we have paid is $210. Number 78, payment for online advertising. So you can write advertisement expense account debit to bank account. So remember, wherever I am not writing vendor name, I am assuming that we have not created any current liability earlier. That's why I am taking that as a P&L expense to bank account. Okay, so I hope you are not getting confused by that. Sorry, the amount was 850 here, my bad. And in this we have $100. Moving on to number 79, which is paid to vendor Q for accounting services. So accounting services expense account debit to bank account. What is the amount we have paid? $500 via check. Well done. Moving on to number 80, payment for online advertising. So again, we are going to write the same journal entry. I'm just going to copy it, paste it here, and the amount we have paid this time is $150. So we have booked 80 journal entries till now. If you are still around, well done. You can take a sip of water. Okay, I'm done. Let's move on to number 81, which is going to be vendor H payroll. So what I'm going to do is payroll expense account debit to bank account. And what is the amount? $2,500. Okay, then we have received cash from customer E, which is our 82 transaction. Bank account would increase and customer E account would be credited by $102.48. Number 83 on our list is refund from vendor for incorrect billing. So again, you can write bank account debit to refund account. Okay, what is the amount we have received? $45. Great. Moving on to number 84, received cash from customer E. So bank account would be debited and customer E account would be credited by 276, sorry, 276.32. Again, we have received cash, but this time from vendor C, I'm going to write $123, which is my 85th transaction. Moving on to number 86, which is going to be paid to vendor S for marketing campaign. So you can write as advertising expense account debit or marketing expense or vendor S, whatever you want to call it, depending upon if you have created a current liability or not, to bank account. Amount is $2,500. Moving on to number 87, which is received cash. So again, bank account debit to customer C account, sorry, customer D account. What is the amount? 147.36. Now 88, which is paid to vendor F for equipment maintenance. Okay, so you can write vendor F account or equipment maintenance expense account, whatever you want to write, to bank account. What is the amount? $300. Okay, so number 89 would be paid to vendor J for insurance. So insurance to bank account. What is the amount we have paid? $450. Okay, so what is our number 19? We received cash from customer B. So again, bank account debit to customer B account. What is the amount we have received this time? 621.84. Moving on to number 91, which is paid to vendor T for office supply. So I'm going to write office supply to bank account. Amount we have paid is $275. 92, which is received cash from customer C. So bank account debit to customer C account. What is the amount which we have received? $481.27. Moving on to our 93, paid to vendor M for website domain renewal. So vendor M account debit to bank account, or alternatively, you would have charged the website domain service as well, domain expense as well. Okay. Moving on to number 94, which is going to be received cash from customer A. So bank account debit to customer A account. What is the amount which we have received here? 389.21. Moving on to number 95, paid to vendor U for website hosting. So website hosting expense account debit to bank account. What is the amount of 95th transaction? Is $75. Okay. Moving on to 96 number, which is received cash from customer B. Again, bank account debit, customer B account. What is the amount which we have received? 987.65. Moving on to number 97, which is paid to vendor B for office supplies. So again, office supplies account debit to bank account. What is the amount we have paid? $75. Moving on to number 98, received cash from customer D. Again, bank account debit to customer D account. What is the amount which we have received here? 543.89. Sorry, this was 325. My bad again. Then 99, which is paid to vendor L for freelance graphic designing. So I'm going to write vendor L. Alternatively, you would have write freelance expense as well. That is fine as well because you are charging the expense, $300. And lastly, we are on to our final journal entry, which is 100 number. We have bank charges entry. Okay, so bank charges entry, you can tell me what is it? Bank charges account debit to bank account. Okay, so what is the amount here? $600. So with this, we have completed all the 100 journal entries. Congratulations. And I hope you are able to recall many of them because we are going to need them while we are going to reconcile. So let me quickly update the dates here. Okay, so all the dates are updated. Let me just quickly refresh this. Okay, so our journal ledger is also updated. You can see all the transactions are updated. So you can see the net balance is 14,000. And if I check the net balance of all the transactions which we have here, you can see we have 14,641. So we have missed something or we have typed something wrong here, which we need to check. Let me just quickly check which amount we have booked incorrectly. Okay, so this customer E we have written as 232, but it was 231.67. Okay, so we have made mistake in writing the amounts. We can check here customer D account on the 5th. I have written as $380, but it was $359. It is $379 here. but it is 359. Okay, so we would have made typing error. I'll just come here, update this amount. I go back here, I'll click refresh. This one is done. Then these small we can leave, rounding off error. I'm ignoring them for now. Then we have this one on the 22nd of January. Okay, we are on the 22nd of January and customer A account we have written as 552. Customer A account on 22nd of January. Where is the transaction? $522. Okay, this one. So we have written 521.90, but actually it was 210. So I'll correct this amount as well. Again, come back here, click refresh. This is also looking good now. So you can see this is one of the reason as well. You can make typo error, which will indicate you have taken incorrect amounts and which can become the reason of your difference between your bank balance and your journal ledger. Okay, so now we can see we have 14,648 is the balance here, and the transaction which we have booked, total of them is also 14,641 and 648. So there are still few dollars difference, but I'm not going to look into that for now because we have to move ahead and see how we actually reconcile our bank statement with our journal ledger. So our journal ledger is ready. All the journal entries are booked. And now in the next step, we are going to learn how we are going to reconcile this journal ledger with our bank statement. So finally, we are now going to look how we actually reconcile our bank reconciliation by comparing our bank statement with our journal ledger. So till now, we have three files. First one is this transactions file, where I got to know about all the transaction took place during the month of January. In real life scenario, chances are you won't find any such Excel file because most likely you will get this information over your email or other communication channels in your organization. But because we are taking a hypothetical example, I have created scenarios and kind of transaction that might took place during the month. Moving ahead, then we book these transactions in our journal ledger by using this file. So in real life, you are going to use ERP like Tally, Oracle, QuickBook, SAP, etc. So you will book your journal entries there and it will automatically create your journal ledger like we have created journal ledger in our Excel worksheet. And lastly, we are going to look at the bank statement. So I have created a hypothetical bank statement from Garib Bank Limited for corporatewala.in and account number is 42808. So this is hypothetical bank statement which I have created. So in real life, you might get Excel version of bank statement or you can even get PDFs. So you need to use those statements. Okay, so now we will start our reconciliation process. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new Excel file and I will name it as bank reconciliation. Now I will name this tab as summary. First thing I want to know is what is my opening balance. So I'll go to bank statement and check what is my opening balance. It is $50,000. Then I will check what is my movement as per GL. So what is my movement as per GL? I'll go to the GL and check this total balance. It is $14,000. Then I will use the sum formula to total it. You can also use the shortcut Alt is equals to. So our closing balance should be $64,000 as per the journal ledger. So I have taken this opening balance from bank statement, but in real life, you will get your opening balance from your journal ledger itself. Okay, so our closing balance should be 64,000 as per our journal ledger. But as per bank, what is our closing balance? Check what is the closing balance we have here. So we have $41,700. So what is the difference we have? So we are getting this difference of 22,000. This is the variance which we need to identify. So there are chances that we might have booked some incorrect journal entries here, or there are some entries which is appearing in bank statement, but we have not recorded them in our journal ledger yet. So we are going to follow the steps which we learned in the beginning of this video. One by one, we are going to follow all those steps and try to reconcile our banks. So try to recall what was our first step of bank reconciliation. It was gather the documents. So we have already completed the first step. How? We have gathered all the information which we needed, like bank statement, our journal ledger dump, and also voucher and receipts, which relates to payments and collections. So because we are looking at the hypothetical example, I don't have the vouchers in present, But yes, when you are going to reconcile in a company, you should have all the required documentation. Okay, great. Now, what was our second step of bank reconciliation process? It was compare the bank statement. So we have also completed this step as well. We have compared our bank statement balance with our journal ledger balance, and we have got to know that there is a difference of $22,000. Moving ahead, what was our next step in the reconciliation process? It was identify the differences. So we have identified the total difference. So we are through this step as well. Now we will move to step number 4, which was reconcile the deposits. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a tab here and I will name it as GL. I will go to my journal ledger workbook and copy this GL dump and paste it here. I will use a shortcut Alt HOI to format it. Then I will create another tab and I will name it as bank. I will go to the bank statement, copy this entire data and paste it here. I will again use Alt HOI and it will format my data. Now I will use shortcut Control Shift L. It will apply filters on my data. Now what I want to do is I want to delete this opening balance line and this closing balance line as well. So these are the only transaction left which relates to monthly receipts and payments. Now what I'm going to do, I will select this whole data and I will use a shortcut Control T. It is a shortcut for converting our data into a table and then click OK. It has converted my data into a table. Same, I will check for my journal ledger as well. I will use Control T. Again, I will click OK or enter and it has also converted into a table. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a column here, transaction type. And now what I will do, I will filter here and select all the negative amounts. So I have two ways. Either I can select them one by one or there is a better way. What I'll do, I'll come here, go to number filters. Then here I will select less than and I will type 0. Then OK. So you can see I have got all those values which are negative. These negative values are my receipts. Again, I will go to this amount column and this time I will filter all the positive values. So again, I have two methods. I can either select them one by one or what I can do, I can come here on the number filters, go to greater than and then type 0 and then click OK. Now you can see it has given me all the positive values. So what I will do, I'll mark them as payments. So for going at the bottom, I'm using shortcut Control down arrow and then I'm using Control Shift up arrow and then I will use a shortcut Alt colon. This will select only the visible cells and then I will use a shortcut Control D to drag the information from the first column to all the visible cells. Now I will clear this filter. Okay. So our table looks good. Now what we are going to do, we are going to compare our receipts as per our GL with our bank statement. So we have so many ways of doing it. In small companies, what we do, we take out the printout and compare them one by one. But imagine if you have thousands of rows, can you do it one by one manually? The answer would be no. So what we are going to do, we are going to create two pivot tables, one on bank statement and one on journal ledger. So in order to create a pivot table, what you have to do, you have to select all the data, then use shortcut Alt NVT. It has selected, then click enter. Now it has created a pivot table for me. I will expand this so I can get to see the fields. Now what I'm going to do, I will select this category, put this in filter. I will select this date, put it in rows, and then I will select the amount and put it in value. In category, I will select only the receipts. So you can see there is no option available currently to select anything. What I'll do, I'll click on this box. Now options are available. What I'll do, first of all, I'll click on this all. Then I will select all the receipt category. So is bank charges a receipt category? The answer is no. Customer receipts is a receipt or collection category? The answer is yes. So I will select it. Interest income. Is it a deposit or a payment? Yes, it is a deposit. So I will select it as well. Marketing expense, other expense. Is it a deposit? No, it is a payment. So I am not going to select them. Then other income. Is it a deposit? The answer is yes. So I will select it as well. And then I will click OK. So you can see I have got all the values which are deposited in our bank. I will rename this tab as bank pivot. Then same thing I'm going to do with the GL as well. I will select the entire data, use the shortcut Alt NVT, click enter. Again, I have these fields. So I will select this date, put this in row. I will select this transaction type, put it in filter. I will select this amount, put it in value. And then again, I will come here and filter only the receipts because we are going to reconcile the deposits first. So I'll click OK and I will close this. I will rename this sheet as GL pivot. I will select the entire column amount and use the shortcut Alt HK and it will format my data. So you can see I have got these deposits as per my GL and I have got these deposits as per my bank statement. Now I have to compare this data with my this data. So there are so many ways. First one is you can use VLOOKUP on date, then come to this bank pivot table, select the data, comma 2, comma 0, enter. If you are not sure how we are going to use VLOOKUP, you can check out my this Excel video. Here I have shown you how we use these basic formulas and functions in Excel. Okay, what I'm going to do, I will go down and select the entire data, use Alt colon and drag the formula using the shortcut Control D. Again, I will go on the top, use a formula here is equals to C4 plus B4. I'll press enter. I'll come again down and drag this formula as well. So you can see these are the dates on which we are getting the variances. How easily we have identified the dates on which our deposits are not matching. So all these small values, I'm going to ignore them for now because these are related to rounding off. But what I'm interested in, these large amounts which are causing difference between our journal ledger and our bank statement. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to highlight these values and you can see on 31st of January, we are not getting anything in bank statement. So we are getting transactions till 30th January only in the bank statement. But in our journal ledger, we have booked the amount on 31st of January as well. So what I'm going to do, I'll delete this and it will give me a difference of 544 here as well. So these are the difference related to deposits. What would be our next step? We need to correct these. But before that, what we are going to do, we are going to move ahead with our next step in our reconciliation process, which was reconcile checks or payments. So for that, we can use this GL pivot and bank pivot. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to create duplicate tabs for these and reconcile deposits separately and payments separately so that when you will be practicing on this, you don't get confused. Okay, so I'll quickly rename this as deposits, same for bank. So you can see I have created copies of these two tabs. Now what I'm going to do, I'll go on the top in the category filter and this time I'm going to select all the payments. Okay, so I have selected all the payments in the bank statement pivot. Now again, I'm going to follow same steps for the GL as well. Instead of receipts, I will select the payments now. VLOOKUP formula is already there, but I'm going to delete it. We are going to use the formula again and reconcile it. So we will use VLOOKUP on our date as criteria. Go to bank tab, select the entire range, comma 2, comma 0, enter. Then I'll come here, use another formula is equals to B4 plus C4, press enter, come here, come down, use Control D to drag the formula. So you can see we have got these values. These are the transactions which are causing the differences. So wherever we are seeing any NA, it means it is not available in the bank statement. So I'll delete this. So these are the transactions which are causing the differences. So I will highlight them as well. Okay. So till now what we have done, we have gathered all the documents. We have compared our bank statement. We have identified the difference. We have reconciled our receipts and we have reconciled our payments. Now, what is our next step in our reconciliation process? We need to book any bank fees or any interest income or any charges which bank has charged, but we have not recorded them yet. So we are going to look at them. So for any expenses, we have to check in this tab, and for any income, we have to check in our this tab. You can see we have got this 10.61 and $10.2. which I believe should be related to our interest income. So we are going to book journal entry for this as well, but in the later part of this video. Okay. Now try to recall what was our seventh step. It was related to investigate the differences and take corrective action. So we have identified the difference in our deposit. We have identified differences in our payments. Now we need to take corrective action. So we'll start with deposit. So you can see on the 20th January, we are getting difference of $10. So what I'll do, I'll come on this GL data and filter 20th January. Same I'm going to do with bank statement as well. So I'll come here and filter on 20th January. So you can see as per bank statement, we have earned an interest of $10.13. Now let's go to GL tab and check if we have booked this amount. We have booked this $10. So I believe which is fine. There is a rounding off issue, but yeah, that is fine. Then we have booked this $200. So you can see as per bank statement, we have earned $30 as interest. But as per GL, we are getting only two transactions here, which means we might have forgot to book one of these transactions. So what we are going to do, we will go to our journal ledger. So in this case, I'm going to use this Excel file, but in real life, you are going to book a journal in your ERP, which can be SAP, Oracle, or any other ERP which your organization is using. So I'm going to come on 20th January and I can see I have booked the 10.13 and $10.22, but what I have not booked is $10.26. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to book a journal entry for this. So what is my interest income journal entry? Bank account debit to interest income. I'm going to copy this. I'll come in the bottom and I will book my journal entry here. And the amount was $10.26. I'm going to keep the date as 31st of January because we identified the difference during our month end close. Moving ahead, now I'll go back in our reconciliation. What was the other differences? So I'll again come to this GL pivot deposit and I can see on the 21st of January as well, we have a difference. So I'll come again on this tab and filter this time 21st of January. Same I'm going to do with the bank statement as well. So I can see we have received interest income here, but in our journal ledger, we have not booked any interest. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to again copy paste this interest entry and book it here. This time with $10.31. Okay, I'm going to keep the date as 31st here as well. I'll copy this and paste the formulas here and the format. Okay, I will go back to my reconciliation and check what is the next difference we have identified. So I'll come here and I can see on the 26th January, we are getting difference of $884. So I'll come back here, filter this time 26th of January. Same I'm going to do with the bank statement as well. Now we are going to compare this. So here you can see we are getting only three transactions, which is 147, 300 and 450. But here we can see we are getting totally different transactions, which means transactions are not matching at all. So we need to identify what are the transactions which we have booked in our journal ledger. So for that, I'm going to check the backup of the transactions which we have booked in our journal ledger. So if we would have done it in real life, I would have checked the receipts or payment related vouchers and bills. But because we are looking at the hypothetical example, I'm going back to my sheet number 1 from where we got all the information related to the journal entries. So I'll go to this column B and select 26th January. Okay, so what we have booked, received cash from customer D in bank statement. We have not received anything from customer D. So what I have to do is, I have to reverse this journal entry because we have booked it, but we have not received any cash from customer D. Okay, then paid to customer F $300. Here we can see we have not paid any amount to customer F as well. And then we have paid to customer J 454 insurance, but we have not paid anything to customer J as well. So what we have to do, we have to reverse all those entries and rebook as per our bank statement. I'll go to 26th of January. Okay, I have these three transactions. I'll copy them, come down and paste. So these are the transactions which we have booked earlier, but now we need to reverse them. So what I'm going to do, earlier my bank was debit, so I will credit it, and earlier my customer D was credit, so I will debit it. So if you will see, net effect of this will become 0. Okay, so what I'll do, customer D I'll put here and bank I will put here. Same for vendor F. It was earlier in debit. I will credit it and I will debit the bank account. And same for insurance premium. I will credit it and I will debit the bank account. So I have corrected the receipts as well as the payments, followed by now we need to book these as well. So what will be my entry if we are paying to a vendor for office supply? I can either write office supplies account or I can use the vendor name as well to bank account. What is the amount we have? $198.5. Then what is the next transaction we have? ACH payment receipt from client. So we have received some payments. So bank account will be debit to ACH. What is the amount we have received? $500. And the next transaction is we have paid to vendor B $49.99. So what is the journal entry we are going to record? Vendor B account debit to bank account. What is the amount? $49.99. Then we have the transaction of daily interest we have earned of $10.23. So you know the journal entry $10.23. We are going to debit in bank and interest income would be credited. Okay. Moving ahead, what is our next journal entry in this bank statement? Deposit from customer A. So whenever we will receive any deposit, our bank will increase and our customer or debtor will decrease. What is the amount we have? 521.34. So I think we are done with our difference of 26th of January as well. Now on the 27th as well, we have a difference of $504. So you know the drill. What we have to do, we are going to come here, filter on the 27th. Same, we are going to apply in the bank. So we can see we are getting 4 transactions here, but in our journal ledger, we are getting only 2 transactions. One is of 622, which is not there. And the other one is of 275 of office supply, which is also not there. So again, we need to reverse all these transactions and rebook these transactions based on our bank statement. So what I'm going to do, I'll go back on the 27th of January. I will copy these transactions. I will book them here. And because customer B was earlier credited, I will debit it, and bank account I will credit, and same office supplies was debited. So I will credit it and bank account will be debited. Okay. Now we have to book the transactions. So I'm going to book daily interest. So what I'm going to do, bank account debit to interest income. What is the amount? We have $10.14 and we have another interest income which is 10.27. So total would be $20.41. So I have booked that combined entry $20.41. Then we have this deposit from customer C of $97. So bank account would be debited and customer C account would be credited with the amount of $97.42. Then we will come here and book the last journal of this day, which is payment to vendor J for office supply. So office supply account debit to bank account. What is the amount we have paid? $375. So I think we are done with our 27th of January as well. We will again go back and check on the 28th as well. We have made some mistakes. So I'll go back in the journal ledger and filter on 28th of January this time. We have 2 transactions here in our journal ledger. Let's check our bank statement as well. We have only 1 transaction of deposit, but here in our journal ledger, we are getting 2 transactions. So we need to check we are getting deposit from customer C and we are paying to vendor M. So we are going to reverse this transaction. Again, I'll go to 28th of January, copy both these transactions, come back down here. And again, customer C was earlier credited, I will debit it, and bank account was debit, so I will credit it. Same for vendor M was debit, so I will credit it, and bank account I will debit. So you might be thinking how these transactions are incorrect. Why we have booked them? There could be any chances that you have issued any check, but the check is not presented for payment in the bank, but you have recorded them in your journal ledger. So currently what we are doing is we are reversing all those journals which are not presented for payment or for which we have not done the collection yet. And same for bank, we are booking all those transactions which are appearing in our bank statement, but we have not recorded them in our journal ledger. Okay. So we have reversed the transactions. Now what we are going to do, we are going to book this transaction which is appearing on our bank statement, but we have not booked it in our journal ledger. So deposit from customer A of 743.92. Okay. So bank account will be debited. Customer A account would be credited. Amount was 743.92. Okay. So our 28th of January is also fine now. Now we will go and check, okay, on the 29th as well we have difference, as well as 30th and 31st. So what I'm going to do, I will filter on all these together so we can do it faster. Okay, so 29th, 30th and 31st, and same I will filter on my bank statement. So you can see as per our GL, we have done only two transactions on 29th, which is one of $389 and the other one is of $75. But as per our bank statement, we have done four transactions and the amounts are different. And same for 38, we have three transactions in our bank statement, but in our journal ledger, we have only one of $325, which is not there in our bank statement. And same for 31st, we have $2,000 one transaction, but in our journal ledger, we have only $600. So what we are going to do, I will go back and copy paste all the journal entries which we have booked from 29th till 31st. I will copy these, I will come down and I will reverse all of them. So earlier customer A was debit, I will credit it, I will change the bank account as credit. So I'm going to reverse all the other entries as well. Okay, so I have reversed all the incorrect journal entries. Now we are going to book the transactions which are appearing in our bank statement, but we have not booked them yet. So we have received deposit from customer C, D, and C again. So what is the journal entry of deposit from customer C? Bank account would be debited and customer C account would be credited. What is the amount? We have received two payments, so I'll add them. So amount would be 426.52. Okay. Then again we have received the payment, but this time from customer D. So I'll just copy paste this transaction and I'll change the amount as 415,415.39. Okay, moving ahead, what is our next transaction? Payment to vendor S. So I'll write vendor S to bank account. What is the amount we have? $350. Then deposit from customer E. Again, I'll copy this journal entry. How much amount we have received from customer E? 92.11. Then what is the next transaction? Payment to vendor C, marketing materials. So vendor C to bank account. What is the amount? $175. Then we have again received the interest. So bank account will increase and interest income will be recorded with $10.24. Moving ahead, what is the next transaction which we have not booked? Payment to vendor I, $2,000. So vendor I account debit to bank account. What is the amount we have? $2,000. Okay, I think we are good. Now what we are going to do, I'll save this. I'll come here. I'll refresh this journal ledger again. You can see our data is updated. Now what I'm going to do, I will copy this data, come back in our reconciliation. I will clear this filter, copy paste here, or let me do one thing. I'll make a copy of this tab again and name it as GL post adjustments. And then I will copy this data again and paste it here. You can see my selection is increased, but we are not getting the correct categories here. So again, I will quickly filter using this number filter greater than 0. All these are related to my payments. Then we have less than 0. These are my receipts. Okay. Now what I'll do, I will create a pivot on this data as well, but I'll create, so I'm not going to create the pivot. I'll just come here, copy this and paste it here. But this time I will change the data source from GL pivot deposit to this post adjustment tab. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to insert another tab and name it as total. And then I'm going to copy this pivot table from here, paste it here. And now I'm going to remove this receipt and payment and I'll select all the data so I can get to see the total level data. So the net movement as per GL is now appearing as $15,000. Now what I'm going to do, I come back this bank deposit tab. I will make a copy of this pivot table, put it here, but this time I'm going to select all the categories and then I'll come back here on this total tab. I will again use the VLOOKUP formula and again I will use C4 plus B4 and then I'm going to drag this formula here. And now we can see we are still getting so many variances. Why we are getting these differences? Because till now we were only looking at the deposit side of the differences, but while doing so, we have made correction in our few payments as well, which we have identified. So there are still few payment related differences are appearing, which we need to correct. So we will start with 22nd of January. I'll go to this GL post and filter. Same, I will go to bank statement and I will filter on the 22nd. And we can see we don't have any 5,000 amount here, but here in our journal ledger, we have booked this amount. So what we are going to do, we are going back to our journal ledger and book a reversal of this 5,000. So it was on 22nd of January. So this transaction is appearing in our journal ledger, but it is not appearing in our bank statement, which means the payment is not cleared yet. So we have to reverse it from our journal ledger. So what I'll do, I'll copy this transaction, come down and book a reversal of this. So earlier Ankit account was debited, so I'll credit it and I'll debit the bank account. Okay. So this one is done. Then I'll go back and check what are the other differences we are getting. So on 25th, we are getting a 2,500 difference. So I'll come here, filter on 25th. So it must be this 2,500 difference. So again, I'll go back to my journal ledger on 25th January. So this is the transaction which is appearing in our journal ledger, but not in our bank statement. So what we are going to do, we are going to reverse this transaction as well. So for that, what we have to do, earlier advertisement expenses were debited, so we will credit it, and bank account was credited, so we will debit it. So the ultimate effect of this will be 2,500 positive, 2,500 negative, which is going to be nil, because in ERP, you don't get the option of deleting the journal entries, or in case, even if you are getting the journal entry delete option, we are not supposed to delete any journal entry as per the policy of company. So instead, what we do whenever we make any mistakes, we book a reversal of that journal entry. Okay, so we are done with this as well. After that, on 26th, we have a difference of 1,386. So I'll come here, same I'll do for the bank as well. So this 26th of January, we have already corrected, but because the booking date we have selected was 31st of January, that's why we are getting these differences. So what we can do for simplifying, and you will be able to understand, I'm going to change these dates as 26th of January or as their actual dates. But in real life, you are always going to book at the date on which you have identified the transaction. So these were the transactions which were booked on 26th of January. Okay, and then we'll go back and check what are the other differences that we are still getting. Can you tell me why? I'll let you know, because we have booked these transactions, but I have not changed the date for these transactions. So what I'm going to do, I'm going back to my journal ledger and update the date as per the actual date, so that you can see the difference is cleared. But in real life, remember, you need to book the correct date on which you have identified the transaction. And for this $2,500, it is 25th of January. So I'll book it as 25th of January. Okay, I'll come here again, refresh and copy paste this data again to my table. I'll come here, refresh my pivot table, and here you go. And you can see the differences are now gone. If you see on total level, we are still getting a $28 difference because we have not used the correct dates. For example, these $10 adjustments, we have booked them but not used the correct date. So we are going to go back in our journal entry and correct the date as well. So you can see the correct dates for those as well. Okay, so we are getting the $10.31 difference, which was on 21st of January, and then on 20 and 21st. Okay, 10.61. Okay, so this should be 10.61, not 31. And 10.26. 31st, but it was not on 31st. It was on 26th. So I'll change the date as 26. Copy paste this data in our table. Come back here, refresh, and you can see the differences are gone. We are still seeing few differences because the date is not correct. So I have to go back and correct the date for remaining as well. I'll go and quickly do it. And if I come here and refresh, you can see our differences are almost cleared. Still, there are a few dates which we have not updated, so we need to check and update them. Okay, so I think we have updated all the dates. Now what we are going to do, I'll just click here, refresh it, copy paste this in our file, and then I'll use this formula again, less than 0, and I'll make sure all these are receipts. Then again, I'll come here, use it greater than 0 this time, and drag this as payments. And then I'll come here and refresh it. So we can see we are getting $10 difference, which is offsetting with 26. So there might be another date which we might have missed. And there is this $5 difference, which we can identify easily by going to the 17th of January. So if you come back again on our summary, you can see our opening balance is $50,000, which will be remaining same post reconciliation. Our closing balance formula will be the same. So this is our pre-reconciliation, and this is our post reconciliation. So opening balance will remain same. The movement which we are getting of GL is $8,200. I'll put it here. So our closing balance as per this should be this, and our closing balance as per bank statement is this. So why we are still getting any difference? Can you tell me? I'll tell you, because we have taken the incorrect sign here. It should be credit. Why? Because it is a debit balance in our bank statement, which means the payment has increased. So we'll take this as a negative sign. So ultimately our difference is $7, which is again matching with this difference which we have reconciled in our bank reconciliation process. So that was all for our bank reconciliation process. I hope you got to learn something from this video. You can get all these workbook from my website. You can use the link in description or scan this QR code, and make sure you are practicing yourself, because if you won't practice, you won't be able to reconcile for sure. With that, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon with the next video.